Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple.
La Masia has produced some of the finest players that the world has ever seen, and perhaps the Academy's magnum opus were the great sides of the late 2000s and early 2010s, featuring the likes of Puyol, Piqué, Valdez, Pedro, and none other than Lionel Messi. But at the heart of perhaps the greatest team of all time were three midfielders, who individually are amongst the all-time greats in their positions. But when they came together, they created something truly special. But what exactly made the trio of Busquets, Xavi, and Iniesta so immense? In this video we take a look. And if you're watching this, you're obviously a massive football fan, and the must-have free app for any fan is our video sponsor, OneFootball. OneFootball is the one-stop app for any fan, as you can choose to follow a particular league, team, or even player, and you'll get the latest score updates, match formations, stats, news updates, and so much more. And the best part is you can get it absolutely free today through the link in the description below. The first to break through was none other than Xavi Hernandez. The La Masia product had his breakout season in 98-99, where he made 17 appearances in La Liga alone. And his progression would continue in the following seasons, ironically facilitated by the aging Pep Guardiola's injury problems, leaving a gap in the team. It was evident from early on that Xavi was a talented midfielder, with a cool head amongst the chaos of the midfield. But it wasn't until his former teammate took over the club that Xavi went from a good midfielder to an all-time great. And not far behind him, 4 seasons to be exact, was Andreas Iniesta, who made the leap from Barcelona B to the first team in 2002. And unlike Xavi, who was almost immediately a regular on the pitch, Iniesta was eased into the side, and it wasn't until his 3rd season that he began to make major contributions to the squad. But that's not to say his talent wasn't evident early on. Still a player at the time, when Pep Guardiola saw Iniesta play, he famously told Xavi, "You're going to retire me, but this lad is going to retire us all." The final piece of the puzzle was Sergio Busquets. His entrance was perhaps the most dramatic, as he was competing with 2 great midfielders in his position in Seydou Keita and Yaya Touré. Within 2 seasons, he had almost completely displaced both, and eyebrows were raised when Touré was sold to accommodate the youngster. But Busquets going on to be probably the best deep-lying midfielder of all time has more than justified that. But what made each of them so good in isolation? Well, having come through the same academy, there's a lot of common threads between the three, but still, they are not carbon copies of each other. One of Busquets' greatest strengths was his sheer tactical awareness. In the Pep Guardiola system, the pivot is the most important cog in the machine, and being able to be the axis around which everything rotated at such a young age was nothing short of miraculous. He knew exactly when the moment was to drop between the centre-backs to relieve them of some pressure, and when to stay high to be the progressor. Press resistance is another word synonymous with Busquets. Many teams knew he was the hub of the team, so they looked to stay as tight to him as possible. And on many occasions it looked like they were succeeding. But with his excellent scanning, he could pass around the pressure, or with a shimmy of the shoulders, he could leave opponents on their knees. Xavi had many traits that made him incredible, but perhaps the most important could be summed up in one word: control. Xavi had game awareness on another level, and when Barcelona were being pressed high, or the game was too stretched, he was able to slow down the match and calm the team's nerves. But after lulling opposition into a static shape, he could then speed up the game and break the team's shape. And this was allowed by his incredible passing range. Whether long or short, he could pinpoint a man higher up the pitch with precision. And one of those men higher up could be Andreas Iniesta, whose own passing range was difficult to match. But Iniesta was a master of finding space and drifting between the lines to receive the ball, and once with the ball at his feet, he was a magician. He could carry the ball up the left to progress the team up the pitch, or he could take on a man, and though not one for excessive stepovers or flip-flaps, a simple drop of the shoulder or ball manipulation could see him get past a marker and into positions to play the killer pass that he always had in his back pocket. In addition, of the three, throughout his career, he also had the most positional versatility, playing wide, higher up, or even deeper. These were incredible parts, but still, the whole was greater than the sum of its parts. So how did they work together so well? Against the few teams who were brave enough to press, Barcelona's midfield had several solutions. The first was to rely on their sheer technical ability and superior match intelligence, essentially playing around the pressure even in seemingly impossible scenarios, creating space for one another or a forward. But Busquets dropping between the centre-backs would also potentially bait opposition into pressing him, creating a gap in the midfield. Although Iniesta could drop deep, here we saw Xavi's experience as a 6 come to the fore. He would instinctively drop into the pivot position, and he had the passing range required to shift opposition from side to side at will. Or he was perhaps the most penetrative passer of the three from deep, so he could find a man higher up the pitch. And Iniesta's presence would often dissuade opponents from committing another presser on Xavi, because as we discussed, Iniesta was great at exploiting space between the lines. We would often see them beat the pressure even with Busquets high, as Xavi could drop in to be the second pivot, to create a 2 versus 1 so that one of them would be free. Again, if opponents committed the extra man, Iniesta or Messi would then be free between the lines. And Xavi tended to operate down the right hand side, so when he did look to drop, it was towards the right hand side, facilitated by the overlapping Alves. This would mean that if a midfielder did look to press him, they would have to cover even more ground and vacate the central regions even more. If they still opted to press, we saw more of what differentiated Iniesta from his colleagues. When he picked up the ball deep, rather than solely rely on his impeccable passing range, he would often carry the entire team up the pitch and into the final third to look to create. In ideal situations, under no pressure, the midfield roughly maintained their positions, as this was key to their positional play. So, when under little pressure, Busquets could pick up the ball, and if his partners higher up the pitch were occupied, he could progress it himself with a penetrative pass into the dropping false 9. Or, more commonly, rotate possession until a better opening to find a teammate in close proximity opened up, hopefully Xavi, who was great at progressing the team. Higher up, in attacking regions, Busquets almost always kept it simple, and where Xavi in deep regions was more about shifting the opposition, higher up the pitch he still had an eye for a pass and was an additional creative threat, often finding runners particularly from wide. And Barcelona tended to attack with a right side bias due to Xavi building up from there and Messi also tending to drift there. Of course, a combination of Xavi and Messi cannot be left unmarked, so we would often see the opposition's midfield shift across to cover. Iniesta was disciplined in holding this slot in the left half space, so when this happened, he would be in the perfect position to receive and potentially play in the advancing winger if the fullback had looked to close him down, or the arriving Messi. And as discussed, he could take the ball by the horns himself, looking to beat a man or two before creating from a better zone. Xavi, Busquets and Iniesta. All three names would go down in history, and to have watched all three play at their peak together for club and country is an honor that most football fans will appreciate. Individually they were exceptional, together they were immaculate, but what are your memories of this midfield? Which other midfield trios come close, or even surpass them in your opinion? Drop it down below. And if you enjoyed this video, you may also enjoy the FMS Patreon. On Patreon, you'll get early access to videos, exclusive videos, as well as the ability to vote on various polls and so much more. It's a great way to support the channel, and it is now cheaper than ever. All you have to do is head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple, or press the card in the top right or the end card at the end of this video. And a special thanks to Loma, Tyler Avon, Efren Perez Pliego, and all my patrons for their support on Patreon.
But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.